include them, consent them, as much as possible, because they are likely to end up in CIPHER.
Okay, so then the next bit about retrospective consent is, what if you run out of time to consent the patient prior to their surgery? So you know they will have a stone performed, but essentially you miss them prior to surgery. So you still can consent these patients retrospectively. The reason we want you to avoid doing this as much as possible is because the baseline questionnaires can't be completed following surgery, because the idea is that they have to represent the patient's preoperative state. So for any patients we're consenting retrospectively, we're missing out on those baseline questionnaires. And we understand that in order to try and catch as many patients as possible, we've accepted that we will miss this out for some patients, but we want to avoid missing these questionnaires out for too many patients. So yes, you can still consent them if you didn't have a chance to do it before surgery, but try and avoid this as much as possible. And the key thing to say is that the surgical data is very, very important for the study. So if you're looking to consent a patient retrospectively and the surgical data has not been collected and cannot be collected, we would advise that you don't consent them, because we don't want to end up with loads of patients without surgical data either, because that defeats the purpose. So please, for any patient you're consenting retrospectively, do make sure the surgical data has been collected prior to their consent. And then finally, as I was saying, we don't want you to use retrospective consent as a default method of recruitment. I know some sites have said that it might be easier to do it that way, but as I said, we are missing out on the baseline questionnaires for those patients. So you can use it for those patients where there's uncertainty, or on the odd occasion where a patient gets missed or run out of time. But overall, we do ask that you kind of set up your recruitment strategies to consent patients prospectively. So next question, why did we bring in the paper CRF? Now, I think we've kind of discussed this quite a lot already.
I think we've covered most of the things, haven't we, about lack of computer access and data, which I know is a variable beast. Some of the systems are slow and crash and can't cope, and some of the surgeons are challenged and challenging, you might argue, so they've not wanted to engage. I think what we're trying to emphasise is that even if you're doing paper CRS, collecting the data immediately at the end of the operation, right as part of your op note, I think is really important. We want to get accurate, contemporaneous data about what has happened intraoperatively. Because going back a week later, did it do this, did it do that, was that the one where I had to make it a bit bigger? You won't remember, you won't get accurate data, and that's not useful for us, what we're planning to do in terms of determining whether what happens in the operating theatre is important for the patient in their long-term development of parasternal hernia. We get a question, not infrequently, what's the difference between a double-barreled stoma and a loop stoma, a loop ileostomy? This is interesting because I would have thought that the surgical PIs should have been engaged enough to help answer this question locally, but it clearly hasn't always been that way. But for education purposes now, anyone who hasn't managed to appreciate the subtle difference. A loop ileostomy, you bring up a continuous length of bowel, and like think of it as a long tube, and it is cut so that half of the circumference is cut on that tube, and then it is everted. So you can see the diagrams on the screen. This is commonly used to divert the fecal stream away from the anastomosis downstream, so that the anastomosis low in the pelvis can heal up and not have to have faeces go by it. And so if there is an anastomotic leak, then there isn't a fecal stream going by that joint, and it will heal over time of its own accord, with second intention, and then you can at a later date close this with a fairly small operation, though that can have its own challenges too. This is fairly common, okay? And that's most of the stomas that we're thinking about, and you can see what they look like. Normally one bit which is proud from the skin and one bit which is more flush. That's what it's meant to look like. I'm getting a lot of nasty looks propaganda. That's what they're meant to look like.
Present company exception.
Yeah. Double-barreled stomas are a different entity. They're also known as Mikulicz stomas, and they're normally used in emergency situations. It's uncommon that they're used in an elective or expedited situation, but they can be if you have intraoperative complications which make life difficult for you, such as extensive bleeding. In this instance, this person has a lot of dead guts. That's what dead bowel looks like when you do a laparotomy. Here, you chop that out, and you're left with an upstream end and a downstream end. Joining the two ends together in this circumstance would be a very risky endeavour. And so what we tend to do is to bring the two ends of bowel out through the tummy wall through the same single profile. You can see an example of what it would look like there. So yes, there are two lumens, and they come out. You might join half of them as you bring them through and open them both out. The upstream end is where the feces come out of. The downstream end is called a mucus fistula. But they come out through the same hole in the tummy wall. The idea is that you're expecting the patient at a later date to be able to have restoration of their gastrointestinal continuity. So that this facilitates joining things back together at a later date. You're more likely to end up having your GI continuity restored with this. Some people don't do that, and they will bring out a stoma at one site and a mucus fistula at another. Sometimes they might leave the distal end stapled off inside completely. But it is used normally as a get out of jail free card when something bad has happened. The classic example is you're doing a right hemicolectomy, the patient bleeds extensively, and you don't want to give them an anastomosis because you're concerned that it won't heal because they've had 3, 4, 5 litres of blood loss. Okay? That patient, the focus is normally on surviving. The issues surrounding their stoma are often very much a secondary consideration. If they are alive, that is your win. Okay? So that's why we don't want double-barreled stomas. They're generally an indicator that something catastrophic has happened and that those patients have got different battles to fight.
Then what is the best way to do follow-up? So this is a question I often get. So we ask that you do the follow-up. This is the follow-up questions that you're completing in the CRF. So as you know, the follow-up questionnaires we send out from the coordinating centre. So don't need to worry about those. But we do ask that you complete the follow-up in the CRF. Now, we ask that you do this by speaking to the patient. And the reason for that is because we ask questions about any CT scans they've had or any admissions to hospital. And if they've had a CT scan or an admission not at your hospital, this information won't be in your notes. And that's why we ask you to do it by speaking to them. We do also ask them these questions in our questionnaires that we send out. But because we want to collect this information, we are kind of duplicating the data collection. And we hope that if they don't send a questionnaire back to us, which as I showed you, there is about kind of 15% that don't come back, that at least that information has been collected by yourselves. So this can either be done either at a routine clinical appointment, or if they don't have an appointment around those time points, then we just ask that you phone them and do it over the phone. Yes?
Can you get both back from the patient and your research site? Which information do you take for your database?
So so for the CT scans, the reason we ask about that is because we need to know that scans happen in order to request it. So we use both basically, and we just put it all together and request them all.
What about number of stoma chemicals? Because there's quite often a number.
That one we only ask you. We don't ask them that question.
Oh, okay.
So this, yeah.
So I was wondering, with the follow-up questionnaire, if you say the response rate is about 82, the longer term questionnaire, I'm wondering, would it be worth seeing if the system can generate like an automatic email to signify to sites, oh, that patient hasn't completed that questionnaire, so we can follow it up with a phone call to kind of improve the response rate?
Well, I think the idea of us setting up a follow-up questionnaire is to minimise the workload for you. So obviously we don't want to then be making you all have to make additional phone calls. We do send out reminder letters to them if we don't get them back. And As I mentioned earlier, we're going to implement the electronic questionnaires, and along with that, we're implementing a new reminder system, which means that they would get, if they've said yes, depending on what contact method they've said yes to, they would also get reminder emails and reminder text messages as well. So I think we want to avoid giving you all more work by getting you to hold them. But
I'm just about doing my 12-month follow-ups. You know the question you talked about earlier with the ruler, how well is the patient coping? Are you asking that of the patient or of the stoma care nurse?
And that should be answered by the stoma care nurse.
Because if the patient hasn't seen a stoma care nurse for 6 months, potentially, how will you manage from that question?
So I think that question was definitely put into the CRF with the idea that at the start of the study we thought most of the follow-up would be done by stoma care nurses. Obviously, as the study's been going, we realise that's not always the case. So what I generally tend to tell sites is that if the stoma care nurse is seeing them, if you can get that answer from them, that's great. If not, if by speaking to the patient yourself you can get an idea of that, then obviously that's great as well. And it is clearly quite a subjective scale, so it is kind of just.
Because the 2 that I've done so far, I've asked the patient. Is that right?
It wasn't intended for use that way. It was more to have an outsider's opinion
Okay.
of whether they thought they were coping. We have dedicated coping questionnaire, the brief code questionnaire for patients, so they get a brief code questionnaire instead to go through that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I know the one patient hadn't seen a stoma nurse for the last 6 months.
I guess the question is, if the person completing it doesn't feel that they can answer it accurately,
Yeah.
what
Well, I
do
think
they do?
if the patient hasn't seen a stoma care nurse for 6 months,
They're coping okay.
they're coping okay. That's your answer.
Well,
I
you
mean,
did give me a 9, so yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I guess at the beginning we felt there might be a mismatch between how a patient thought they were coping,
Yeah.
and that's not just stoma, it's psychologically and everything, and how you, if you've been seeing the patient, might feel they're coping. We just felt it was important to try to capture that information if we could.
Just on back to what you said, I can see, I'm sure there are people that fall through the net, but as part of most pathways of care, and I'm sure I'm not the only one to say this, they should be seen at certain points, or at least contacted. Yeah, and at 12 months, yes, most places will have something in place for a review. But if they've missed in any way, maybe you can highlight that to the stoma care team and say this patient hasn't been seen, and you know, maybe they're absolutely fine, but at least give them that option.
So now our stoma care team discharge patients, obviously with that proviso, ring us if you have a problem, but I don't know when.
Then they have a community
Yeah.
stoma care nurse that follows them up, and I think that happens in lots of areas as well. But I don't know, it's just trying to, yeah, not just ticking boxes, but thinking that the patients might get lost.
And then as the final resort, if you aren't able to get through to them on the phone, which obviously does sometimes happen, and if after a few attempts you haven't been able to contact them, then what we would ask is that you, if you can, that you collect as much information for that follow-up from your notes, and enter that, because we have some data. And then try to contact them again at their next follow-up time point. And then finally,
Hana, just get back a minute. I'm sure you'll know this, but you should be able to go into your own hospital systems and see if the patient has some untoward other reason why they might be attending hospital for another specialty or something. I mean, patients shouldn't go missing. We all know that, but it is now quite easy to track down what's going on.
I know that I have been contacted by some sites who say that they've had surgery at their site and they're recruited there, but they then get discharged into the care of another hospital. So if they then can't get in touch with that patient, then they don't have any record of that patient's follow-up on their hospital systems. So that's kind of where we do.
Different bits of the country are more or less connected in that way.
And then the last question we have is what do you do if the patient is still in hospital 6 weeks after surgery or longer? So there's the screenshot of the D1 form. So there's a question at the top to say, is the patient still in hospital 6 weeks after surgery? And if they are, you can just tick yes to that and leave the rest of that form blank. And we do just ask that you give them the 6-week questionnaire task that we would normally send to them at home. And you ask them to complete it in hospital and then send that to us, and we will do the data entry for that. If in the rare occasion a patient is still in hospital at 6 months, or they've been discharged but ended up back in hospital, then what we would ask is if you can give them the questionnaire, if you feel that they are able to complete the questionnaire and you can give it to them, then that would be great, and again, just send it to us to enter. But it just means that if they're in hospital over that time period and the questionnaire is sent to their home, then obviously they're not going to be able to complete it, so it just means that we get all that data. Are there any questions?